Yeah, I see it. Good. All right, I can get out of here. All right, everything's good there.
All right, we are live. Have a great show.
Thank you.
Of course we will.
Come with us on a journey into the unknown, the unexplained, and the unbelievable. We will test your senses and challenge your beliefs. A world where science and religion clash. Or do they? You will meet real people and hear real stories, but you will not believe. You will witness strange sights and hear strange sounds, but you will not believe. This is the New England Ghost Project. Welcome to the nightmare.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Ghost Chronicles International. I am Ron Kolick, New England's own Van Helsing. With me, my co-host, all the way from Wales, even though he's English, the gold standard in ghost hunting, the god of infrasound, and all around good chap, Steve Parsons.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Not the god of infrasound today, I'm the god of WD-40 and 3-in-1 oil and
Why? What's up?
no, just restoring some stuff. You
Oh,
know how I like you know how I like to keep busy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Except for me, you never have time for me. But that's besides the point.
That's because I'm keeping busy.
Yeah. Okay, I know where your priorities are. Anyway, if you haven't seen Steve's lovely piece, he did a Ghost Chronicle Bite on our Patreon page. Check it out. It's not quite how to describe it, but it's up there. And if you're a Patreon member, you get access to it. Yeah.
There'll be
Oh,
another one soon.
get out of here.
Yeah.
They're a lot harder than I thought. But anyway,
It is really difficult to keep it down to about 2.5 minutes. I'll give you that.
well, it could be longer. I don't. There's no time limit on anything.
Sort of like, people
Yeah,
have got
you don't want an hour because then it'd be a show.
no. Well, they're called bites, so I sort of like two, maximum 3 minutes, because people have got short attention span these days.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got a short attention span these days.
You've always had a talk, unless you were talking, of course, and that's another
Right.
story.
My school teacher used to say that. Easily distracted.
I am totally. You know that. I go on. If you ever seen the
Oh,
morning show, then you know that I really very seldom follow the subject.
yep.
We tend to go down different rabbit holes. But anyway,
Squirrel.
yeah, exactly. So a lot of people have been asking me and messaging me and stuff saying, "What do we have against EMF meters?" And
No.
it's like I think that the EMF meter is probably the most misunderstood piece of equipment that's on the market today. People take them and they use them like magic wands and telephones and everything else. And do they even know what they really do?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them. I did actually once. I went to like a psychic fair,
Ooh,
and there was a bunch of. Sorry, there you go. And there was. I'll just put the flashlight away. There's a bunch of ghost hunting groups there with their tables laid out with their one end of the table they had a video screen playing their evidence, and they had an array of equipment all over the table. And I mean, this was about 5 or 6 years ago now. And I sidled up, and I was chatting to them, and I on the table was an array of, well, lots of equipment, but 2 or 3 EMF meters.
hmm
There was a cell sensor, there was a Mel meter, a couple of other well-known pieces of equipment as well. Anyway, so I was saying, well, so I asked the nice gentleman manning the display, what What's the what do you use these for? I mean, I know a little bit about electromagnetism, but why do you use these? And I was expecting the long-winded will ghosts emit EMF and spirits and we can detect blah blah blah. Actually, the answer was refreshingly honest. He said, "I don't know, but everybody else uses them, so we." And you know what? I thought that was the most honest answer I think I've ever heard.
That's true. So let me ask you, because you have your degree
Yeah.
is in science. It's in the study of what physics. I forget now. I always whatever it is.
Well, it's
Measurement things,
yeah, it's measuring stuff.
measure stuff. There you go. And so, what does an EMF measure meter measure, and what does EMF actually stand for?
Okay, right. Well, let's put one myth to bed first, shall we?
Okay.
Because EMF in the context of an EMF meter is a common parlance term. It is not a scientifically accurate term
Okay.
because EMF in scientific or physics notation stands for electromotive force.
Oh. Huh.
It and has done for about 100 years.
Hmm.
But EMF in its paranormal context and common parlance context is electromagnetic fields.
Right.
Now, they are differentiated when writing because an electromotive force, EMF, is generally written lowercase, whereas electromagnetic field, EMF, is now written higher case, capital.
Okay.
So there is that small differentiation. But when we talk about electromagnetic field, EMF meters, we are actually using an incorrect term. So we'll put that
Right
to
off the
bed.
bat.
It's semantics. As the name suggests, it measures electromagnetic fields. In reality, most EMF meters do not measure electromagnetic fields. I'll come to that in a moment. What is an electromagnetic field? An electromagnetic field is, as the name suggests, two fields, an electric field and a magnetic field. And these two fields are inexorably interlinked in such a way that if one changes, the other must. So any change in the electric field will change the corresponding magnetic field. Any change in the magnetic field will change the corresponding electric field. Now, we could talk all night about what is an electric field and what's a magnetic field, but we don't need to really worry about that too much. Suffice to say that whenever an electron moves, whenever electricity flows through anything, so the nerves in your body, lightning through the air, radio signals, it really doesn't matter. Whenever electricity moves, it generates around it an electromagnetic field. Now, a number of years ago, it was theorized by a Canadian neurologist that
Did you say urologist?
neurologist,
Neurologist.
neuropsychologist.
Okay. I thought you were saying urologist. That's a little
Well,
out
well, he
of your
was.
field.
He was.
He
But
was
he
urology,
yeah.
not
Uh,
neurology, urology.
no, he wasn't a
Totally
uro.
different.
Yeah,
Up
he
and
wasn't a
down.
urologist. He wasn't a urologist. He was a
Yeah,
neurologist.
that's what I heard
Yeah.
you say.
Yeah. Well, listen more carefully.
Oh,
Um,
learn to speak English.
it's my native language.
So's mine, but they're
Yeah,
not the same.
they are not the same.
Yeah, you're right.
Anyway, so this guy, his name for those who are interested and want to look it up, is Professor Michael Persinger, and he was at the Laurentian University, which I think is Ontario, Canada. And he postulated that changes in the electromagnetic fields, when applied to key parts of the brain or certain parts of the brain, can cause people to have unusual sensations and experiences, including hallucinations, auditory events, strange feelings of being ill at ease, a whole raft of different experiences. And he noted that these experiences were, in many cases, remarkably similar to those that are reported by witnesses to paranormal phenomena. And so he drew a potential link between the two, that it might be electromagnetic fields acting upon the brain or parts of the brain, causing people to have false paranormal experiences or experiences which they interpret as being paranormal. Most notably, one of the ways he tested this is he developed a helmet which people put on. He used it was effectively a motorcycle helmet, and in it he had some coils that were able to generate small electromagnetic fields quite close to the brain. And some of the people reported sensations and experiences, including feeling like they were in the presence of God. And this led to the helmet being nicknamed the God helmet. Now, he published the research. He published several papers based upon his research. And the headline was, you sort of imagine the headline. I don't have a copy to hand, but it was something along the lines of electromagnetism and paranormal phenomena link. Now, most people, most media, most newspapers don't, they print the headline. It's a sensationalist clickbait headline. And most people don't go any deeper, but they did note the link between electromagnetism and paranormal experiences. And they kind of flipped it on its head, and suggested that, perhaps ghosts, there were various ideas put about, ghosts could emit EMF because people do. That ghosts could use the electromagnetism as a form of energy. When they say use my energy and do weird stuff. There was all manner of strange theories and ideas that were being tried. Now, at about the same time, there was the rollout of cellular telephones. And people were getting a little bit jittery about things like microwave ovens, cellular telephones,
Because
personal
we knew what microwave ovens could do. I mean, if they weren't
personal
shielded.
pages, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And people were worried about electromagnetic exposure to electromagnetism and adverse health effects. And America being America, some entrepreneurial company said, "Hey, we can use off-the-shelf technology and make a really cheap device that people can test their home appliances or their house to see if there are lots of electromagnetic magic moonbeams zapping around and just ready to do them harm." And they brought out, this company was called Safe Range Enterprises, and they brought out a meter marketed as the K2 Safe Range meter. It was inexpensive. It was about $30 or $40 when it first hit the market, and you could measure the electromagnetism in your own home. Well, of course, the ghost hunters loved it because they could also measure electromagnetic fields in haunted houses, not really understanding how electromagnetism works and how extensive it is all around us, wherever we are. And so they were getting really unusual, some unusual readings, which they interpreted erroneously as being paranormal. Then when they got bored of that, they then started to say, well, clearly they're not working as a ghost detector. We are not detecting ghosts. but they noticed that the lights on the meters or the buzzers were flashing or bleeping or indicating. And so they started to use them as communication devices.
Right.
I mean, if you can hear my voice, make the red light flash twice. Make the buzzer buzz.
Okay, so before we get into that type of stuff, I want to go back again to the meters themselves. And once again, you said they measure well, they're now
Well,
considered
yeah.
electromagnetic field radiation tester. Uh,
Well, I was going to say there is. I did allude to it. There is that they don't actually measure that earlier, because in order to keep the cost down, there are some exceptions, but the majority, including something like the K2, in order to keep the costs down, they measure one aspect of the electromagnetic field. Remember, I said it was made of an electric field and a magnetic field.
yeah,
If
that's
one
right,
changes,
tri-field
the other
meter,
might.
for instance.
No, I'm
Yeah.
not talking about the trifield yet.
Right.
So, because these two fields are so interconnected, by measuring one field, you can extrapolate the value of the other field. So, the cheap way to measure an electromagnetic field is to measure the magnetic field. So, something like a K2, something like the cell sensor, and similar, the Mel meter, they only measure the magnetic field component. So they are in effect not EMF meters, they are magnetometers.
Makes sense.
The data provided for the electric field, the E part, is then extrapolated from the measurement value of the magnetic field. Now, there are exceptions. The tri-field you talked about before, that has a dedicated electric field sensor and additionally a magnetic field sensor. But that's not the reason why it's called a tri-field. The tri-field meter, because an electromagnetic field exists in 3 dimensions: up, down, left, right, front, back, X, Y, Z fields. Most EMF meters are single axis meters, which means they can, in fact, if you don't align the meter axis with the field axis, you may not measure anything at all.
So
But the tri-field,
what are they measuring though? I mean, are they measuring what particular field, or is it?
because the electric field or the
Yeah.
magnetic field has a polarization, and think of your television aerials.
Right. Okay.
You have flat ones, horizontal ones, you have vertical ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you are using a horizontally polarized sensor in a vertically polarized field, you won't see it at all. The meter won't detect it properly. Now, the tri-field has a 3-axis XYZ sensor. That's why it's called the tri-field. Not because it measures 3 fields, because it measures in 3 axes.
Okay. But okay, so I'm still trying to get, we measure it's 3 axis. So, and you mentioned that the K2 and like those are only single field measured, and the other ones are
Single field, and
which field are they measuring?
They are measuring the magnetic field.
Strictly the magnetic field.
Yeah, they are magnetometers. They are single axis magnetometers.
Okay.
That's the inexpensive way of doing it. Now, you can work with that. That's perfectly acceptable. You can still use them. It just requires a different technique than when you're using a 3-axis meter or a triaxial meter. So they're perfectly acceptable, and extrapolating one field from the other is also perfectly acceptable way of measuring things.
Okay.
Because the ratios are fixed and known. So it's not a weakness of it's not a flaw of the meter, but if you don't apply the correct operating methods when using it, the data you will gather will almost certainly be erroneous.
So you talk about the proper methods. So what is the proper? I mean, for instance, we understand that uh, even in the meters themselves can have different ranges to them. I guess that's the best way of putting it. Uh, we did an experiment. We took a source, uh, a motor, and we took different meters and measured the distance between the meter and the first notice of an increase, and it varied, and it varied from direction as well. So,
Well, it will do because you are, depending on the type of meter you're using, if you're using a single axis meter.
mhm. Yeah, we took things like the K2, the cell sensor, the
So
millimeter. Yeah,
unless you are, unless the sensor axis aligns with the field axis, that's the only, you will never get the maximum field value measurement accurately. You have to make sure that now it's relatively simple to do, because if you have a three-axis meter, you can just place it anywhere in the field and it will register the value at
right.
that point. With a single axis meter, the normal procedure is to take three readings. So one with the sensor in the x-axis, then you rotate the meter 90 degrees, take a reading in the y-axis,
Absolutely, nobody does that. You realize
then
that, right?
tilt the meter 90 degrees vertically and take the y-axis, so the z-axis, and then you take the average of the three. But nobody ever does that. They instead walk around. Now, walking around holding a meter is potentially one of the worst things that you can do,
Absolutely.
because you are generating, and this is especially problematic. Well, for two reasons. One, if you are using a magnetometer, you are moving the sensor through all manner of different fields, which will cause the value of the field to continuously change and fluctuate, because you are moving through an electric field or an electromagnetic field. If you are using a meter that has an electric field sensor and you are holding it, you will see a steady voltage of a steady value of somewhere approximately 50 millivolts per meter cubed, because it's measuring you. It's
Mhm.
measuring the person holding it. You are think back to when your car radio broke, or your domestic
Oh,
wire,
sure.
and you dampened your finger and touched the aerial socket and the signal picked up, because
Yep.
you are a big bag of salty water, and you are a very good conductor of electromagnetism.
Mhm. So now you have okay. So we go in a little bit to what they're measuring, and each one of them has colored lights, or they have a actual meter, or they have a digital meter on it, and they give out different things. Like this one I've got one up here now, and it's what I don't know what kind of is. It's just the old fashioned one. Um, it has the three settings: the 200 mg, the 2000 mg, and the 20,000 mg.
Uh-huh.
And so, why set it at any of those particular ones? Why would you set it at any of those particular ones?
Well, for a start, the measured units are milligauss
Yeah.
mg, not, as I once saw a paranormal group describing as milligrams, but there we are.
There you go. That's weight to it.
Yeah, it's milligauss.
Yeah.
Gauss is a
That's why
Gauss.
a lot of them are called Gauss meters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and a Gauss meter is a magnetometer. So you are only seeing a value for the magnetic field.
Mhm.
So if it's in milligauss or micro Tesla, which is the I forget the word now, the standard. It's the scientific standard for measuring magnetism is actually the Tesla. The Gauss is the old-fashioned one.
Named after the Tesla car, of course.
Yeah, named after Elon Musk's car. So anything that's giving you a value in Gauss or Tesla or milligauss and micro Tesla is only measuring. That's only the magnetic field component. And I've forgotten the rest of the question.
The question was why the different settings for 20,
Oh.
200, and 2000.
Well, all that is, all those different settings do is put a stepper resistor into the circuit. So it decreases. So, for example, 20 milligauss setting scale is more sensitive than 200, which is 100 times more sensitive than 2000. Don't worry about the numbers. It's logarithmic now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are looking for an extremely weak signal, then you would range the meter's sensitivity. It's a sensitivity in short.
To that bell.
So if you're measuring an overhead power line, it will just drive it off the scale at 20. So you decrease the sensitivity of the meter.
So what is it a true? Yes, it is. It's still taking a true reading because of resistance, yada yada. I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That was the bell, so we have to take a
It was the
break.
show brought to us by Ron.
What's that?
It was the show this week brought to us by.
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Steve.
Letters XYZ and the triaxis.
Yeah, and the letters MG. Whatever. Milligram, yeah, or milligauss. But anyway, yeah, we should take a break. You're listening to, let's see, we are here, Ghost Chronicles International with Steve Parsons and Ron Kolick, right here on TogiNet Radio, and we're all good podcasts are being listened to. And we're brought to you by Circles of Wisdom, 386 Mirror Street, Methuen, Massachusetts, the Glant Messier Family Law Group. 55 High Street, North Andover, Massachusetts. What was that? Positively Brilliant Reiki infused candles on Essay. And of course, our very good friends on Ghost Chronicles Radio on Patreon. Become a member and get access to exclusive stuff. And I also want to mention that we have a Dining with the Dead at the end of the month at the Haunted Village Inn with my good friend Vala Ventura, who's coming in from Minnesota to talk about if Mark Twain's ghost really wrote a novel by via the Ouija board after his death. So that's intriguing. So anyways, we'll be right back after the following messages. Village Inn has steak tips, Steve.
Absolutely.
Do you have a paranormal event, book, or something else you want people to know about? Then why not advertise it on Ghost Chronicles Radio? With over 150,000 downloads a month, get your message out to an audience that's interested in the subject. We have a plan at a cost that fits your needs. For more information, contact Ron Kolick at anyghostproject@comcast.net or call 978-455-6678.
Located in Illinois, there lies a sleepy little town where nothing is a common occurrence.
You going to that party in town tonight?
Heck yeah! I only turned 18 once.
That is until the night of celebration.
Where the hell is she? Oh no. No, Jessica!
What's happening?
From the creators of Shadowhunters, Bite Me, comes a tale of primal terror and grindcore mayhem. Shadowhunters, Kill, Jessica! Kill!
Oh, are you reading me? Come in. Hello? Greetings from the Shadow, and welcome to Shadowzine. My name is Jeff Belanger. I'm an author, podcaster, and explorer of the unexplained. For 30 years, I've been investigating the paranormal, UFOs, monsters, and things that bump in the night. Lately, you may have noticed how major TV networks and even social media networks have been pushing our favorite subject back into the shadows. I say good. That's why I launched Shadowzine, a monthly underground publication that covers your favorite topics in depth by some of the leading writers and researchers out there. If you're looking for 30-second TikTok clips, go somewhere else. If you're ready for a deeper dive, put down your phone and pick up Shadowzine. You can't find it in stores. This is old school print. Head to shadowzine.com and be part of the underground revolution. That's shadowzine.com, and I'll see you in the shadow.
And if we didn't bore you to death with electromagnetics in the first half, this is the second half of tonight's 2 hours of Ghost Chronicles Mayhem. Coming up after this is something that's probably a lot more interesting than electromagnetism, unless, of course, you me, in which case I love electromagnetism.
I love electromagnetism.
I love it.
So one thing we touched briefly on, but really didn't get into too deep, is the spectrums, the wavelengths of it. So various devices give off different wavelengths, right? Are read by different. Yeah, I'm not even saying this right. In other words, the wavelength on a, for instance, a microwave is longer than one on a X-ray, for instance. And
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, everything in the universe that is above absolute zero, which is what, minus 273 Celsius.
zero.
Yeah, a bit like a Boston winter. The simplest way of describing it is whenever an electron moves, whenever electricity flows, there will be an electromagnetic field. That electromagnetic field is limited or has two characteristics. It has frequency. The frequency is the number of waves past a given point in a given period of time. In the old days, it used to be measured like the old radio days, kilocycles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, megacycles. Well, a cycle is the number of waves that pass a given point in a second. It's that simple. That's a measure of frequency. So every electromagnetic wave has a frequency, and every electromagnetic wave has amplitude. Amplitude is basically the up and down part. Think of it if you remember from high school, drawing the electricity supply as a sinusoidal curve going up and down, series of waves going up and down 60 times a second. And at the peak and base of those waves, it was around it was about 180 volts. That gives you a combined average of 110, which is what the American voltage system is. So you can define any electromagnetic wave by describing its frequency and its amplitude.
Okay. So
for example, at one end of
you could tell sources of.
Yes. If you know the frequency The amplitude is simply how much of it there is. So just think of more or less. Amplitude is more or less electromagnetism. The frequency is the DNA of the electromagnetic wave. If you know the frequency, you know the DNA, you know the source of the electromagnetism. Now, it could be, if it's at one end of the spectrum, it could be the atomic vibrations of an atom with a frequency of billionths of a micron. And at the other end of the scale, it could be the ultra long wave emissions from deep space.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle bit is the bit that really those of us on Earth should be interested in. And right in the middle of the middle bit is a very tiny portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. It's, if you look at the whole electromagnetic spectrum and then look at this particular section of it, it's barely, it's barely a thin line on the electromagnet. You wouldn't notice it. That's the visible light spectrum. That's the bit that our eyes can detect. Now, slightly above that, you have the ultraviolet spectrum, the infrared spectrum. And slightly below it, you have the ultraviolet spectrum. Now, we can't, as humans, detect them, but other living creatures and some of our equipment that we use can see into those regions of this tiny portion. Now, one way of looking at the electromagnetic, or a bigger slice of the electromagnetic spectrum, is to use a device, a meter, that can look at a bigger chunk of the electromagnetic spectrum. So, for example, some of the EMF meters that are on the market will have a stated detection range of, say, 10 hertz, which is 10 cycles. 10 hertz is, yeah. Anyway, up to 5 or 6 gigahertz, which is essentially, physicists call that portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. We see in the visible portion. Next to that is the radio frequency spectrum. And that's where all of the meters work. They all work in the radio frequency spectrum. So you could call them RF meters, radio frequency meters.
Yeah, some of them are actually called that.
Yeah. No, but all of them are measuring within the radio frequency spectrum.
So is that the flaws in the meter when we try to use them for ghost hunting?
No.
Because they can measure these radio frequencies.
They are designed to measure. If you look at the specifications of your TIMU meter or your MEL meter, it will say measures from 20 hertz to 2 gigahertz. Now, inside of that portion of the radio frequency spectrum, which is just below the visible portion of the electromagnetic frequency band, there, you've got every device that transmits. So you've got TV, Wi-Fi, cellular,
radios,
everything. If it transmits a signal, you've got bleepy things, you've got transponders on jets, you've got data links between, from waterboards, and everything that is transmitting data wirelessly is in this portion of the spectrum. So the meter is actually picking up all of it. Now, the circuitry in the meter is designed to be more or less sensitive to different portions of it, or you can change the settings by twirling a dial or changing a calibration setting on it. so you can focus in on particular parts. One of the interesting things I found out a hard lesson I learned years and years and years ago in a haunted house, we were getting some very erroneous electromagnetic signals, and we could never really understand where they were coming from, because
And
we
you
were,
have good meters too. We're not talking
yeah,
KT
but we
meters,
were.
yeah.
I mean, this was early days. The technology wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I get it. Yeah.
we could see these large amplitude electromagnetic fields. We had no idea where they were coming from, and all our attempts to find them failed. Then a few weeks afterwards, we were in the middle, literally in the middle of nowhere, out on moorland, 10, 15 miles from the nearest town, and of course, well away from most of the conventional sources of radio frequencies. And yet we were still getting, although not as often, we were still getting these anomalous because we didn't understand them, readings. Then we technology improved. We had a bit more money, and we invested in a meter that, for the first time, would show not just the amplitude but also the frequency. Now, at the time, they were very expensive, but now they're much more affordable. And when we could see the frequency, it was like somebody opening your eyes and going, "Oh, there it is." We now know what the source was, because we were well away from cell phones, we were well away from taxi cabs, we were well away from Wi-Fi routers, we were well away from the electricity supply in a building, all of the common causes that are attributed to stray electromagnetic fields. What we were picking up was the BBC transmitters that were located over 100 miles away. And the reason we were picking them up is these long wave radio transmitters of the BBC World Service. Our Voice of America has one. China has hundreds. They are designed to be heard all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so they beam out megawatts of energy in such a way and on particular bands of frequencies in order that their signal can be heard, the propaganda can be heard anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Well, of course, if you can hear the voice of Radio China International while you're in downtown Seattle or the middle of Boston, Massachusetts, then that you are basically, your radio is picking up a radio frequency electromagnetic field.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're not expecting that to be there, if your meter is also responding to that by flashing lights and bleeping, and why wouldn't it? Because it's designed to look at that frequency band. It's saying, "Hey, boss, I'm detecting a radio frequency electromagnetic field here." Mm-hmm. If you don't know the frequency of the field that you're measuring, all you are able to say is there is more or less electromagnetism at a given point where you're measuring. Right. I always likened it to when you were in Tudor England, before the days of the flushing indoor lavatory. People used to empty their chamber pots out of the bedroom window onto poor passers-by on the street. If you're measuring only the amplitude of an electromagnetic field is kind of like walking down a Tudor street in England, Elizabethan London, and suddenly discovering you're wet. You don't know whether somebody's thrown a bucket of water over you, whether it started raining, or whether somebody's emptied a chamber pot over your head. All you know is you are wet.
Right. That's a good analogy, actually. I remember growing up, we used to have these big console radios that picked up stations from all over the world, different countries. You picked up airplanes. You picked up amazing different things.
Well, I mean, you can do it on a very simple device. It doesn't require power because it gets the power. Remember the cat's crystal?
The crystal radio?
Yeah, the crystal radio, the cat's whisker and crystal radio. it has no power. There is no battery inside it. There is no power source in it that makes you hear the music or the radio station. It gets the power from the electromagnetic wave that it's detecting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And that's what Tesla said, wasn't it? You can send power all over the world. And in a way that in a way he's right, because a radio signal, you can use it to power the radio and other devices. You've seen the old trick where you use your walkie-talkie nearby to a fluorescent tube,
Right.
and you can make the fluorescent tube light up.
Oh, sure.
And
All
in
right.
in the old days of citizen band radio, right at the top of what was the antenna called? The Fire Stick. Right at the tip of the Fire Stick, they used to put a small 1.5 volt neon bulb.
Yeah.
Whenever you transmitted, the tip of the Fire Stick antenna used to light up red.
Mm-hmm. So we are getting towards the end of the show, and I wanted to wrap this up with the use of it. We talked quite a bit about what an EMF meter is, what it measures, what it does. So if the theory is that if ghosts use magnetic energy somehow or produce magnetic energy, are we measuring them, and or is there even why would we even do it? For instance, if we do a baseline, which is used to be a common thing, I don't even think people do baselines anymore, of a place where, you go around measuring, looking for EMF, and, you note any spots and so forth like that, then you do your investigation. And if there's a deviation from that, then, you say, oh, this is interesting. Is it even really worth doing now? Are EMF meters even worth using on an investigation?
If your EMF meter is a cell sensor or a K2 or similar single axis magnetometer from Amazon, Temu, Ghost Augustine, whatever.
Yeah. Whatever.
Then in terms of using it as a useful device for to support your paranormal investigation, leave it at home.
Mm-hmm.
It is giving you no useful information at all. It can't. It can't, because you don't know the frequency of the signal that it will detect. So you can you can't say with any certainty that it's a ghost or it's Radio China.
Bro, what about when we use it for communicating? If you're a spirit here, can you make it jump up to the red? And
there you've got, in that equation, you've got two unknowns. And if you have two unknowns in one equation, you can't work the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Because the two unknowns, of course, are you don't know the source of the electromagnetic field that you're measuring. You don't have the frequency data, and we don't know collectively if ghosts and spirits, one, exist, and B, if they do exist, can they in any way, shape or form manipulate either the electromagnetic field, or can they manipulate directly the meter itself? The old ghost in the machine notion of they're not making the electromagnetic field change, they're not fluctuating the electromagnetic field. Instead, and it's another theory that's been untestably posed, which is that the communicating spirit, actually directly just makes the lights flash, or makes the buzzer go on and off. It requires no electromagnetic field at all. It just does it directly. So there's
also a third one though, Steve, too, isn't there? Because
in
a lot of these instances, you have somebody holding the meter, and they say, oh, if there's a spirit here, can you make it on? Now we know that we ourselves produce EMF, and it's very possible that we're able to subconsciously even generate a field that could cause it to go up.
I would say that it's absolutely certain that we are causing the meter to change its measurement. That's a certainty, and
you think that's a certainty? Yeah.
That can be repeatedly demonstrated.
I think so too.
as to whether you can directly influence the meter in form of psychokinesis, there are positive arguments in favor of psychokinesis, but it is completely unproven. So your difficulty with using an electromagnetic field meter is not the technology. It's a it's a weakness in the technology combined with a lack or too many variables in what you're measuring. Now, that's all that said, EMF meters are useful, because if you are confronted with a situation whereby people are reporting anomalous experiences, you might want to be able to rule out the potential of either an erroneous electromagnetic field caused by some problem within the with equipment or the electricity supply or the cabling or something else within the building or the location, and that on one occasion did happen on a case I worked on. Yes, it did. If people go to the Parascience website, which is parascience.org or .org.uk or hundreds of
Whatever
other
it is.
Well, we've got a few URLs, and look at the Cheshire Farmhouse. You will see a case where an EMF meter was used to find and locate an electricity supply cable that was faulty and was generating a huge electromagnetic field at particular times. And the anomalous experiences that were reported coincided closely with the times when these electromagnetic fields were at their strongest.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use it in the context of eliminating that as a potential.
Right. We had a similar example, and I'm sure I brought it up before, about when we did the first Ghost Chronicles back on WCCM. We took a lot of calls back then. It was old-fashioned radio. And this woman would call the show constantly saying that she had one-eye aliens in her kitchen. And, she would always call in. So finally one day I said, well, you know what, we're going to go and take a look at this place. So I told her on the air, and then after the show was over, we went out and we looked at it. Well, she lived up on the, I think it's fourth floor, third or fourth floor of this flat. And we came into the kitchen, of course, and there on the panels in the kitchen were knots. And she perceived these knots as one-eyed aliens. But the interesting fact about it is there was a huge amount of, like a ton of, like in your example too, where it was just, off the scale on most of the things. She was, being bombarded by this. So that could have affected her as well. So
it could have caused her to have unexpected sensations that she could then have extrapolated with the visual, if she was having visual hallucinations. Yeah, it's perfectly possible. Perfectly possible.
Yeah. So it was interesting.
It's something that a competent investigator would consider looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Another clue that it's worth pulling out the old EMF meter is if you walk into a property and you get that strong smell of ozone. Because they might be using a negative ion generator, an air purifying device, and some aircon units now have these ionizer units fitted to them as well to remove dust and to make the air healthy and negatively charged. Well, it's something that's you can quickly look at the electromagnetic spectrum and go, well, I think there's something worth looking at, or no, we can rule that out. It's kind of a litmus test. Mm-hmm. So they do have their uses, but it comes down to using the things properly
and understanding them.
I'm not talking to ghosts on them.
So if you were to take a meter out on an investigation, what would you recommend?
Well, I use one of the it's an American GMQ EMF 390.
Mm-hmm.
which is a 3-axis, and it does have a limited ability to display frequency. I also use my cell phone because that has a very high, very sensitive magnetometer built into it.
Oh, cool.
And they are usually,
when you use a cell phone, would you use it holding it?
With the magnetometer, you can hold it.
Okay.
Because of the way the magnetometer is designed, it's shielded. Because it's designed to be held.
Yeah, I've never used a cell phone for a minute. That's why I asked that question.
And beyond that, if they are giving indications of something more, then we would pull out one of the Aronia meters, which costs a lot more money and do a lot more work.
That being said, we have to pull out of this show. Anyways, you've learned more about EMF, EMF and EMF meters than you ever wanted to know about. So stay tuned for Ghost Chronicles. What are we now?
Ghostology. If you want more, there's whole chapters on it in Ghostology.
Oh yeah, go check out Ghostology. By the way, get Ghostology. If you're a ghost hunter and you're serious about ghost hunting, get Ghostology. It's on Amazon and it's everywhere. It's a great book. It's used all over the place. So good night, everyone. God bless and stay safe.
Good night.